My daughter-in-law banned me from seeing my grandkids because they loved me more than her, after I gave them $200K for 10 years. Now they're begging for money. But I cut them off, and they never saw my revenge coming. I'm 60 years old. I'm a widow, and I run a farm that my husband and I built together for over 30 years before he passed away 5 years ago. I never thought I'd get to this point, but I need to tell this story because I basically lost access to my grandchildren because of my daughter-in-law, and I don't know. Maybe telling it will help me process all of this, or at least feel like I'm not completely crazy. The thing is that for years, literally years, I've been financially supporting my son Matthew and his wife Angela, and now it turns out I'm the villain of the story. Because my grandchildren love me more than they love her. Can you believe it? Let me start from the beginning, because this didn't happen overnight. Matthew is my only son. He's like 35 now, and he married Angela about 10 years ago. From the start, I wanted things to work out well. You know, you always hear stories about horrible mother-in-laws and daughters-in-law who hate each other, and I didn't want to be that kind of mother-in-law. So when Matthew asked me for help with the down payment on his first house, I didn't hesitate for a second. I gave him like $40,000, which isn't a small amount. But I thought, well, he's my son. I want him and his family to start off right. You know? My husband had already passed away by then, but I know he would have done the same. The farm gives me enough income, and I live alone, so it wasn't like I was going to end up on the street for helping them. Angela never worked after William, their first son, was born. She decided to stay home with the kids, which is perfectly fine. I mean, each family decides what works for them. But the thing is that Matthew didn't make that much either. He worked in sales for a medium-sized company, and with just one income, things were tight for them. I would see how Angela bought things they clearly couldn't afford, like designer bags, expensive clothes for her and the kids, and she was always redecorating the house. When William was like 3, and James had just been born. James is 5 now. William's 7. Matthew called me one day and said, "Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but we're a bit short this month. Could you lend us something?" And I said yes. Of course, without thinking much about it. I sent him $2,000. That became a regular thing? I guess. Every 2 or 3 months, Matthew would call me needing help with something. Rent, credit cards, the car, whatever. I always said yes because, well, he's my son, and besides, my grandchildren needed things. I didn't want William and James to suffer because of money problems. And honestly, I could afford it. The farm does well, and I don't have other big expenses. I live pretty simply. But looking back, I think Angela got used to me always being there like a personal bank. During all this time, I saw my grandchildren all the time. They were my whole world, literally. William and James would come to the farm almost every weekend. Sometimes they'd sleep over Friday and Saturday. They loved the farm. I'd teach them to take care of the animals. We'd ride horses, make cookies, that kind of thing. William was especially attached to me. He'd always say, "Grandma Helen this, Grandma Helen that." Angela would come with them sometimes, but you could tell she didn't really like being at the farm. She was always checking her phone or complaining about the heat or that there was too much dust. Matthew would come when he could, but he worked long hours. Then 2020 came and, COVID changed everything for everyone. Matthew lost his job in March of that year. The company made massive layoffs and he was out. Angela went into total panic because obviously without income they weren't going to be able to pay for anything. I told them, "Look, don't worry. I'm going to help you until Matthew gets another job." And I basically supported that family for almost a full year. I paid their mortgage, credit cards, utilities, food, everything. I was sending them like $6,000 a month, easily. I took money out of my savings and from the farm's profits, and honestly, I didn't regret it because they were my family and we were all going through a difficult situation. Matthew finally got another job in October 2020, but he was making less than before. So I kept helping them, just less. Like $3,000 or $4,000 a month, depending on what they needed. The kids kept coming to the farm. That didn't change during the pandemic because we lived pretty close, like 45 minutes away, and I was alone in an open space, so it was safer than other places. Those weekends with William and James were what kept me sane during all that horrible time. Honestly, things started to change like in early 2021. I don't know exactly when, but I noticed Angela was more distant with me. When I'd call her to coordinate the kids coming over, she'd say things like, "Oh, we have plans this weekend," or William has a birthday party, or James isn't feeling well. There was always a reason. I thought, well, that's okay. They have their life. I can't expect to have them every weekend forever. But I started missing them terribly. From seeing my grandchildren every week, I went to seeing them like twice a month, and then once a month. In the summer of 2021, I asked Matthew and Angela if I could take William and James to Disneyland. I had never done a trip like that with them. We'd always stayed at the farm or gone to places nearby. But I thought William was already 7 years old. Well, almost 7. James 5. It was a good time to do something special. I told them I'd pay for everything. The hotel, tickets, food, everything. It would just be 5 days. Matthew said it seemed like a good idea, but he had to check with Angela. Like a week went by, and finally Matthew called me and said yes, we could go. That trip was literally one of the best moments of my life. William and James were fascinated with everything, the rides, the characters, the lights. William kept saying, "Grandma, this is the best day of my life," and James wouldn't stop laughing and jumping. We took like 1,000 photos, bought Mickey ears for everyone, ate ice cream 3 times a day because why not? It was perfect. When I brought them back home, they were exhausted but happy, and I felt so grateful to have been able to give them that experience. But apparently that trip was the beginning of the end. Like 2 weeks after we got back, Angela started canceling visits to the farm more often. It was always something, that the kids had homework, that they were tired, that she needed Matthew to be home to help her with I don't know what. I tried not to push, but I was going crazy from missing my grandchildren so much. In October or November, I don't remember exactly, William called me from Matthew's phone one day after school. I answered and heard his little voice saying, "Grandma, Helen, I miss you so much. When can I come back to the farm?" It broke my heart. I told him, "Sweetheart, I miss you too. I'm going to talk to your mom so you can come soon. Okay?" And he said okay. But he sounded so sad. That same night, I received an email from Angela. She didn't call me. She sent me an email, which seemed weird to me from the start. The email said something like, "Helen, I need you to understand that Matthew and I are William and James's parents, not you. I feel like you're trying to manipulate the children, so they love you more than us. The Disneyland trip was inappropriate because you didn't consult us properly before planning everything. The children are now confused about who's in charge, and that's not healthy. We need some space from you for a while." And it basically ended saying, I wasn't going to be able to see the kids for a bit without specifying how long. I was in total shock reading that. Manipulate? Me? If all I had done was love them and take care of them, and yes, okay, give them nice experiences when I could. I forwarded the email to Matthew with a message, saying we need to talk about this now. Matthew called me the next day, and he sounded super uncomfortable. He told me, "Mom, Angela's a bit sensitive about this." I asked him sensitive about what exactly, and there was a long silence. Finally, Matthew told me, "Well, it's that she feels like William and James talk more about you than about her. She says that when they come back from your house, they only talk about what they did with you, and sometimes James says he prefers being at the farm than at home." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told Matthew, "Are you telling me Angela is jealous of her own mother-in-law?" Matthew didn't deny anything. He just said, "Mom, please understand. It's hard for her. She feels like she's not a good enough mother." I kind of exploded there. I told him, "Matthew, I've been helping you financially for years, taking care of your children, doing everything I can for this family, and now it turns out the problem is that the kids love me too much." "Really?" He tried to calm me down, saying they just needed some time, that things were going to get better, that Angela was just stressed. 2 months went by and I didn't see my grandchildren at all. Not even at Christmas. Angela said they were going to spend the holidays just them as a nuclear family, that it was important for the kids. I spent Christmas alone at the farm crying, basically. I tried to send gifts to William and James, but Angela sent me a message saying, "Please don't send more things," that they were trying to teach the kids that Christmas isn't about material gifts. This came from the woman who spends all her time buying things she can't afford, but whatever. In February 2022, like 3 months after all this, I received another email from Angela. This one was longer and uglier. It said she had decided I couldn't see William and James ever again, that my presence in their lives was toxic, that I was teaching them materialistic values, May, and that until I learned to respect their boundaries as parents, there was no space for me in the family. I was devastated. Literally. I called Matthew immediately crying. I told him this can't be happening. You can't let her take my grandchildren away from me. Matthew sounded defeated. He said, "Mom, I don't know what to do anymore. Angela is very stubborn about this, and if I don't support her, she says she's going to leave me." That's when I made a decision. I told Matthew, "Okay, if Angela wants me to disappear from the kids' lives, fine. But let it be clear that I also disappear financially. I'm not going to keep paying for the life of a woman who just told me I'm toxic to her children." Matthew panicked. He said, "Mom, don't do this. Please. We need your help." I told him, "Matthew, you have to decide what's more important here, because I'm not going to be someone's bank who treats me like this." And I hung up. I cut off all financial support overnight. I didn't send them a single dollar anymore. The first few weeks, Matthew would call to me desperately saying, "Mom, please reconsider. We have debts. We can't pay the mortgage without you." I told him to talk to his wife about getting a job, that it was time for Angela to contribute financially if things were so difficult. Matthew said, "Angela refused to work because the kids needed her at home." I responded, "Well, then you're going to have to adjust to living on one salary, like the rest of the world." The following months were horrible for me emotionally, but I stood firm. I heard through mutual acquaintances, because Matthew barely talked to me anymore, that things were really bad for them. They had to take William and James out of the private school where they were and put them in a public school. They sold one of their 2 cars. Matthew got a second job on weekends to try to cover expenses. Angela still wasn't working, but apparently she stopped buying all the expensive things she used to buy. At some point, I think it was in May or June 2022, a friend of mine who goes to the same beauty salon as Angela told me that Angela was telling all the ladies there that I was a horrible grandmother who had abandoned my family. She was saying that I had cut off all contact with my grandchildren, when it was the other way around, that I was selfish with my money, after years of supporting them, and that Matthew was devastated by my rejection. Basically, she was painting me as the monster of the story. That hurt me a lot, but it also made me angry because it was all lies. By the end of 2022, I heard that Matthew and Angela were in serious financial trouble. They hadn't paid several credit cards, they had debts in collections, and they were behind on the mortgage. Part of me felt bad, but another part thought, well, this is what happens when you live beyond your means and don't accept help with reasonable conditions. I wasn't asking for anything crazy, literally just wanted to see my grandchildren. That was all. In January of this year, 2023, I received an email from Angela. It was the first one in almost a year. It said something like, "Helen, I know things between us have been difficult, but we urgently need help. Matthew is working 2 jobs, and we barely sleep. The kids ask about you sometimes. Could we talk about some way to resolve this?" She didn't offer any apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done. She just wanted money again. I responded very simply, "When you're ready to apologize sincerely and to allow me to have a healthy relationship with my grandchildren, we can talk. Until then, my answer is no." She never responded. This year has been a lot of healing for me. Honestly, I decided that if I wasn't going to have my grandchildren in my life for now, and who knows if I'll ever see them again, I needed to focus on myself. I joined a gardening group in town, started volunteering at an animal shelter on Thursdays, and I'm planning a trip to Europe for next year, something my husband and I always wanted to do, but never could. I also established a scholarship fund in my husband's name for low-income students in the county, using some of the money I used to give Matthew. I've thought a lot about whether I did the right thing. Sometimes I feel guilty, like, should I have put up with Angela's mistreatment just to be able to see William and James? Was I selfish to cut off the money knowing that was going to affect my grandchildren too? But then I think, what example am I giving them if I accept being treated like this? Isn't it better to show them, even from a distance, that people deserve respect and dignity, and that money doesn't give you the right to treat others badly? The truth is, I miss my grandchildren every day. William must be 8 years old now, James 6. I wonder how they are, what they like now, if William is still as curious as before, if James still laughs at everything. Sometimes I imagine that when they're older, maybe teenagers, They'll look for me and I'll be able to tell them my version of the DOPS story. Other times, I think Angela will have put so many things in their heads about me that they'll never want to know about their grandmother. That possibility destroys me. Matthew and I talk very occasionally now. Like every 2 or 3 months, he sends me a short message asking how I am. I respond cordially, but don't give much more. I know he's in a horrible position, trapped between his wife and his mother, but I also think that as an adult, he has the responsibility to protect the relationship between his children and their grandmother, and he didn't do that. He chose to keep the peace with Angela at the cost of everything else. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive him for that. People ask me if I ever considered legally pursuing grandparent visitation rights. I thought about it, talked to a lawyer and everything. But he told me that in our state, grandparent rights are really complicated and that I'd have to prove that denying me access to the kids causes them significant harm, which is almost impossible to prove. Besides, honestly, I don't want to force a relationship like that. If William and James come to visit me someday, I want it to be because they want to, not because a court ordered it. There are good days and bad days. Good days I can focus on all the good things I have: my health, my farm, my new friends from the gardening group, plans for the future. Bad days. I sit looking at old photos of William and James at the farm, reading cards they made me for Mother's Day years ago, crying for everything I lost. But I'm learning to have more good days than bad ones, I guess. What hurts me most is knowing that Angela won. In a certain sense, she wanted to keep me away from the kids, and she succeeded. But she also lost the financial support she needed so badly, so maybe nobody really won, or maybe we all lost. William and James lost their grandmother. I lost my grandchildren. Matthew lost the relationship with his mother and financial stability, and Angela, well, Angela has what she wanted, but now she has to live with the consequences of her decisions. My position now is clear, and it's not going to change. Until Angela apologizes to me sincerely, acknowledges the harm she caused, and accepts that I have the right to be part of my grandchildren's lives, I'm not going to take a single step toward reconciliation. And even if Matthew calls me crying or tells me the kids miss me, my answer is going to be the same. I'm not going to be anyone's bank again, and I'm definitely not going to accept being treated like I'm worthless while I subsidize the life of the person treating me that way. Sometimes people tell me I'm being stubborn, that life is short, that I should forgive and forget for the sake of the kids. And I understand that. I really do. But I also believe there's a point where you have to set boundaries, where you have to say this isn't okay and I'm not going to allow it anymore, even if it hurts. I've spent years giving and giving and giving without asking for almost anything in return except love and respect, and I couldn't even have that in the end. So no, I'm not going to give in on this. My dignity is worth more than any amount of money I could give them, and my peace of mind is worth more than maintaining a toxic relationship just to have access to my grandchildren a few hours a month. Last week, I turned 60. I celebrated with my new friends from the gardening group. We had a nice dinner, and they gave me a beautiful plant for the farm. Nobody from my family called me that day. Not Matthew. Not Angela. Obviously not the kids either. It hurt. I'm not going to lie. But I also realized I'm building a new life, one where I don't depend on validation from people who don't value me. And that has to be enough for now. Right? I don't know what the future holds for me, if I'll ever see William and James again, if Matthew will eventually understand what he lost by not defending our relationship. But what I do know is that I did what I had to do to protect myself, and even if nobody else understands it, I can live with that decision.